Hey guys, it's Thomas here. Guess what I got? A Class D self-assemble power amp. So my friend called me up the other day, actually a few months ago, and told me, Thomas, I saw this video. 300 bucks, assemble your own power amp and it will perform as well as a $3,000 power amp. I'm like, okay, interesting. I mean, sure, bring it over and let me try it out. Now, this video is not to tell you can it compete with a $3,000 power amp, because I don't have one. What I do have is a $4,000 Class D MRSP power amp and another one here too. And of course I have my bel cantos. I do have this one here, Y Red for Sound. This is the ST250. This is about $1,000-ish. So I don't have a $3,000 power amp, but I figure it's still interesting to talk about this. It's still a very nice unit. And I also will take this opportunity to talk about Class D in general. So the first part of the video, I'll go over this. Second part of the video, I'll share with you my experience with Class D. I would start by saying this. When I got this unit, I called my friend Mr. Vintage. Mr. Vintage, because he owns a lot of vintage system. And I told him, dude, man, you got to try this power amp. It's pretty good. Actually, I never plugged it in. And then a few months later, he messaged me back and said, yeah, dude, this is pretty good. I'm like, what? This is actually pretty good? So I dropped by his home and I listened to it, and then I go, okay, I get it now. So first of all, let's start by saying, how does it compare to my own Class D power amps? I'll put it this way. Mr. Vintage chose this over my bel canto, which is $4,000 when it was new, at his place. So he'd rather play with this than my bel canto. Part of the reason he told me is that the problem when he put high-end gear into his vintage setup, it reveals too much the shortcoming of his system, so he doesn't like that. Everything is about balance, synergy. So in his case, this actually worked better, and he prefers this. At my place with more modern speakers, I prefer this. Once you plug it in, the first thing you'll realize is that, okay, there's more control on the bass, it's more airy, it's faster, and so forth. But that's not to say that this is not good at all. This is actually pretty okay. It's quite surprising, I'll put it this way. So I got to commend my friend for building it exactly like the video. You have your binding post at the back, your XLR. He even bought the cables converting XLR to RCA. And then you have the jack for the power cable, and you got a little switch in front. Very light, Class D after all. So my assessment is that overall it's not as strong as my Class A here, for example, or my bel canto. However, it's not a stretch to say that this $300 power amp can compete with these in the mid-range. So that's where the claim of $300 competing to $3,000 is not absurd. So does it mean that you should rush out and buy one of this? This is DIY, right? Well, self-assemble. So the problem is that if you don't like it, well, good luck in reselling it. But for my friend, let's say Mr. Vintage, he's definitely very interested in buying this off my other friend. If you're planning to get something like this, just make sure that you have a warm sounding speaker with a bit of bass. Vintage speakers, some of them with this big woofers are good because they're pretty bassy. And the reason is because Class D is typically lean sounding, so you want to balance it that way. So just make sure that you have a warm sounding speaker if you're going to go for something like this. So why are my friends going Class D? So for Mr. Vintage, he told me, look, he's been playing with Class A, Class AB for 40, 50 years. He's done with it. After a while, you have the same characteristic. Mr. Kanta, the reason is because he's trying to find the best performance for the price, and he realized the Macintosh he had before, which is 3 times the price of this on the used market, is not 3 times the performance of this. In fact, this can do something that the Macintosh cannot do. So for him, the price does not justify keeping the 452, and he ended up buying this Class C instead. Of course, the big problem with Class D, now all this is just our experience, so just take it as just an opinion, is that Class D is a bit dry. There's not a lot of emotions when you listen to Class D. And finally, when it comes to bass, it's not as heavy. There's not as much weight as, let's say, a Class AB amp. So these 3 things usually turn people away. Some people say it sounds a little bit too digital. No. I would agree to some extent if you're using, let's say, a receiver, a home theater receiver. However, Class D today, like the higher end ones, are not like that. Yes, they're still a bit dry. That's true. But if you think about it, Jeff Rowland, that's the top of the line power amp, is Class D. That's what, $50,000-$60,000, and my friend has it, and I heard it before. I actually heard it so many times, and I can tell you, with the right setup, they perform amazingly well. There's a reason why Jeff Rowland chose it as his flagship, right? If Class AB is so good, I mean, if you can charge 50, 60,000, yeah, why choose Class D then? Unless you're very confident that it sounds great. So given all the shortcomings of Class D, why are my friends only interested in Class D right now? Number one, Class D is honest sounding. So let's think about that for a second. You know, these Macintosh systems, I remember in the old times people say, wow, I hear a lot of emotions with it. I love that Macintosh sound. If you think about it, it is colored. If you take 10 singers singing the same song, it is impossible that all of them will be able to convey that emotions. That's why, you know, there's some singers that are good at that. It's a talent. And yet, when we listen to a system that's set up for like emotions of tubes and so forth, man, I can hear the emotions in every song. You know, it's not really true to the recording. Out of that 10 singers, there should be maybe just one that is very good at that. And that's where Class D is great, honest to the source. So when you listen to it, you'll realize that, okay, you'll realize that the one that is very talented in expressing her emotions stands out above others, and you understand, you get that emotion. One thing I want to stress, when I say honest to the source, okay, don't take it literally. Class D is not going to make an average recording sound great. Human voice has an expression of singing without a microphone. Very natural. Now, while Class AB, what's amazing about it is that it can make a good recording sound great and a great recording sound super. So even some bad recording can sound okay. With Class D, a little bit more difficult. When you test gear, you really have to spend a lot of time with it. You have to try different music. Just don't plug it in 30 minutes. Oh man, it's too dry, and shut it off. Try to understand it, the strength. At least this is how me and my friends do it, right? Of course, we all do things differently. And the second thing that we realized playing with Class D, because it's a bit dry, we have to use tubes in the front end. And for us, that is the key here. And of course, give a few amps a try before passing judgment. Because, for example, Audio Research and Bel Canto, I lent it to Mr. Cantor, and for him, it never worked. But when he got this Class C, he was like, whoa, this is incredible. The impedance on this is really high, so it was a good match with Audio Research. And that's where it changed his mind completely about Class D. In fact, this is his, Mr. Cantor. The same thing is at his place, because after he heard it, he had to buy one, so he bought this one. Mr. Cantor like Class D now is because of the bass control and the speed of it. So recently, I had Mr. Cantor over and we listened to the Polk LSIM 707. You see, I prefer with the Moon W5.3 Class AB because the top end sounds warmer. And while Mr. Cantor prefers the Class A here because the speed of the bass is faster and the bass control is tight. Boom, 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 instead of boom, boom, boom. So it's a different way to listen. And I was telling him, you know what I should do? I should like buy amp it. This goes to the power side, the bass, and this goes to the top end. Yeah, maybe one day I should try that. And over the years, I've lent my Class D amps to other people, and it's refreshing to hear from them telling me that it has completely changed their mind about Class D. The key, what I notice is always that there's a tube front end to pair with it, right? You need to add a bit of richness to it. Sure, it colors a bit the sound. You need to add a bit of warmth to the system, because Class D, as I say, is a bit cold and lean sounding. You want to add a bit more weight to the system. That's why you need tubes in the front end. A full solid state Class D setup can be a little bit too digital, quote unquote, sounding for some. For example, like this Class A, it has everything, right? The DAC is all built in. Sometimes with some speakers, for example, the Klipsch RP8000F, I prefer using my tube DAC. Oh, where is it? Okay, my Musical Paradise tube DAC with let's say the Klipsch RP8000F. So the tip here is that if you ever want to try Class D, just make sure you have tubes in your chain. And yeah, that's about it. That's our experience with it. So I guess I'll finish the video maybe with a story. You see, Class D is smooth because there's a lot of power with it. It doesn't generate a lot of heat. It's light. It's cheaper. And I remember the day when my friend brought over his Pass Lamp XA 30.5 Class A 30 watts to try against my bel canto. At the time, we had this Pioneer S3EX, a very difficult speaker to drive. And it was shocking to all of us that day. We were 3 audiophiles that day, that the bel canto actually outperformed the Pass Lamp because it drove the speaker with ease. And because of that, it was smooth sounding. And we all agreed, wow, this setup was the best today, despite the fact that we have a Class A Pass Lamp XA 30.5. Of course, the tables would turn when we put it to a more efficient speaker. But for difficult to drive speakers, we noticed that with Class D, with a tube front end setup, it works really well. And regarding this Class D amp, I have to say, yeah, it is impressive for the price. Just keep in mind that, you know, it has that Class D characteristic. So when I use this for fun, I actually pair it with the Musical Paradise tube DAC. So it sounds okay with even with the Klipsch RP8000F, which is known to be very forward sounding. I was able to listen to many hours with it. And is it a good idea to build one for yourself so that you can get into the Class D world? Just keep in mind, as I said, that when you build something like this, it's difficult to resell. But if you're planning to keep it forever, and if you have some tube gear at home to pair with it, yeah, sure, give it a try. All right, with that, see you next time.